My name's Nick Daniels for schoolpsychologyprograms.info, and today my guest is Allison Keller, and she is a school psychologist. How you doing, Allison?
Good. How are you, Nick?
Good. Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions. First question is, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your current position.
Okay. I am currently a school psychologist at an early childhood center in Buffalo, New York. And I also sort of split my time between that school and our feeder elementary school. So I do pre-K to 8th grade right now. And much like yourself, I went to Kent State for grad school. Did my internship in Texas in a really, really huge district of like 73 campuses. Got my first job as a contractor in Delaware, and now I'm back in upstate New York.
Great. Great. What got you interested in pursuing a career in school psychology?
I had always been interested in psychology in general, and I took an AP psych course in high school, and I had kind of considered going into teaching, but I knew myself enough to know that I couldn't be in a classroom with kids all day long.
But, me either.
Right, but I still wanted to be in the school.
Sure.
So my cousin happens to be a school psychologist, and I got some information from her and learned more about it, and it just seemed like the perfect fit.
Great. How do you feel your role as a school psychologist is different working in a more urban setting compared to a school psychologist who might work in a suburban or rural setting?
It is vastly different. Having worked in all those settings,
Sure.
And I can't necessarily say that it's because it's urban versus suburban. It could just be differences between districts or states or whatever, because there are huge differences between all of those anyway. But I think probably the biggest difference is just that there are significantly higher needs in terms of like where the kids come from. They don't have the resources at home, so you're kind of restarting from the beginning, and you're kind of going from the get-go. And I think the biggest challenge there is just coming up with really creative ways to give them what kids in suburban or rural settings might already have.
Sure, absolutely. What does an average day, if you can think of what an average day is for you, look like for you at work?
The first thing we learn in school psychology is that there is no typical day for a school psychologist. True. I think, again, just like everything in our field, it will vary from state to state, from district to district, and then from school to school. It depends so much on who your administrator is, who your team is. Right now, my day will consist of testing, observations, interviews, and then I'll schedule all that into my day, and then I'll be pulled between like 5 and 7 times for a behavioral crisis during the day and have to reschedule all of that.
So you can't really expect that whatever you have planned for that day to follow through exactly the way you would hope.
It almost never does. If that happens, I've been like asleep and dreaming about it.
Exactly. So what, in your opinion, is the best part about being a school psychologist?
When I saw that question that you sent to me, I tried really hard not to come up with the typical cheesy, it's the kids answer.
The political correct answer.
Yeah, but honest to God, that really is one of the best things about it when you make progress with a kid that you have been like working so hard on, and then you see the progress. It is the best thing. But I think beyond that, the best part about being a school psychologist is that I don't have to use one part of my brain every day. I'm being creative for 1 hour, then I'm writing reports and using the intellectual side for another couple hours. Like, I think school psychologists are some of the most well-rounded people on the face of the earth.
Yeah, it's very autonomous, and I do agree. I mean, working with the kids has always been enjoyable, for sure. As an early career school psychologist, what skill have you learned through practice that was not explicitly taught in your school psychology program?
I could make a list that goes on for days about that, but I think I'll just summarize it and say that it's the procedures. Like when you get into a district, and again, it'll vary depending on where you are. You just have to learn their procedures and their system, and there's no possible way that a school psych program that can teach you that because there's no one way.
Mm-hmm.
Like learning who has to contact the parents to schedule a meeting, who has to file the office discipline referrals, things like that. You just have to learn the system.
So the more systems as far as who is responsible for what.
Yeah, like in Texas, just for example, in Texas, LSSPs, which is what they're called in Texas, do only emotional behavioral assessment.
Really?
Yep. As an intern, I was able to do like IQ and achievement testing, but only because I was an intern. Educational diagnosticians do that there. LSSPs do behavioral interventions, the other side of our job, but
sure.
They schedule the meetings, they keep track of the manifestation determinations, they do all of that. In Delaware, the school psychologist does all of that. In New York, we have CSE chairs.
Wow, I mean, it can really vary. Yeah. I think that your variety of experiences has probably helped you as far as understanding how much those roles can really be flexible and change from place to place.
I've been very, very, very lucky, and I just can't even really verbalize how important that's been in terms of like where I am now.
What advice would you give to those individuals who are interested in becoming a school psychologist?
There is a ton of advice. I actually started a list like during internship of things I wish I had known. None of it would have changed anything for me. None of it would have said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just looking through this now. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give somebody getting into this is to know yourself as deeply as possible, to know your strengths and your weaknesses, not just because the better you know yourself and your own learning styles, the better you can help the children. But even down to just the tiny, 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 minute things. Like, for example, I had to analyze how I learn best. I had to analyze, do I learn individual style? How's my processing speed? Because it helped me to understand how a student is functioning. I'm just looking through this. You have to, everyone says make friends with the secretary, which is true. Yes, but
very
also make friends with the speech language pathologist.
Also true. Very true.
Every single situation, every single setting I've worked in, the SLP is the person that you work with most closely and has the best information for you.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Last question. What personality characteristics do you feel are needed to be a successful school psychologist?
I tried to dwindle it down to 2.
Okay.
I think the single most important one is adaptability. No matter what, you have to be able to adapt to any given situation because you'll get 20 things thrown at you in 20 seconds. And you kind of need to be able to do that. And then a really incredibly strong sense of humor because that is the only way you'll get through this.
Yeah, if you're not laughing, you'll be crying, is that the saying?
Yeah, and I find that people appreciate it. They look to the psych, not just the kids, but the people you work with look to the psych for guidance and how do I handle this and, even navigating social situations. So to have a sense of humor really helps you help that situation.